Today I'm going to talk about developing tanks, and I hear you've all been bad, so it's time for your injection. Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm not really sure what came over me then, sorry about that. Anyway, I am here today to talk to you about developing your own films. This is going to be the first in a series where I'm going to take you from developing your very first black and white film right the way through to colour development. And I'm running this in parallel with my beginning photography series. So there's lots of stuff to come here. Let's get into it. By far the greatest expense involved with film photography, as opposed obviously to digital, is the cost of developing that film that you shot. Yeah, film cost is fairly significant too, but the developing is what really puts off most beginners. And it shouldn't. I was probably 10 or 11 when I developed my first film, and it really wasn't such a big deal, and it's even easier these days. Let me go through what you need. Now, back when I was 10 or 11, my father gave me a tank that was very similar to this one. This is a daylight tank. Doesn't mean you can load it with film in daylight, but it means that you can do all the development in daylight. This is a very old Patterson tank. In fact, I've got a couple of these. This one I think comes from the 50s. It's Bakelite. Not sure I trust using them these days. They're nice as display items. It's a lovely old 120 Rondenax tank here, which I need to do a little bit of work on to get it going again. But these are more display items. All you have, and I'll show you in the old, if I can get the lid off it, the old 50s tank, is you have a spiral. This one's actually Bakelite, and it's got a good squeak as well. This, you load the film on and you wind it to the center. Oh yeah, you wind it to the center, and then this is all done in the dark, and then you put it in the tank the right way up, and then you put the lid on, pour in the chemicals and do the development. What you need, of course, to get things going in the dark is, now it's not a black t-shirt, it is a changing bag. It has a zip at one end, your arms go into the little holes, and these cost around £20, and you can load your film in complete darkness by feel, which is not too difficult once you've done it a couple of times, and you'll be ready to go. Now, modern tanks are a bit more sophisticated. This is an AP tank. There are normally two reels in here. I've got one reel here at the moment for 35mm, but this one is adjustable, and it goes from 120 roll film down to 35mm, and you can actually use 32 35mm rolls or reels in here. They get loaded in the dark, the lid goes on, and you get ready to develop. Now, there are all kinds of different types of tanks. These are Patterson System 4 tanks. The Patterson spirals, in my opinion, that's the bit that goes in the center, are superior to the AP ones. And I've got 3 Patterson spirals in this big tank, which can do 3 120 films at a time. Trapping my thumb in the process. I actually prefer the older Patterson System 4 tanks, but hey ho, very difficult to get hold of nowadays. So assuming you go out and buy a tank, what else are you going to need? Well, let's go through a list, shall we? The first thing that you're going to need, and to me it's actually the most important, is, when I can get it out of its paper tube, a thermometer. Now, black and white films need to be developed at 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, for those of you across the other side of the Atlantic. And one of these is around £10 on Amazon. Well worth it. They are a great thermometer. I've broken a couple of them, but you have to be a little bit careful. Obviously, they're glass. But they do come in a nice protective tube for delivery, and I tend to leave them in there. They're great. You can measure all the chemicals before you start temperature-wise, get them all to 20 degrees centigrade. We'll get into the way that you do that later on. But that's the thermometer. And whilst I'm at it, you should, when you're doing anything with chemicals, be wearing gloves. That's really quite important. Now, the other thing you're going to need are measuring jugs. Now, I personally don't spend out and buy dedicated photographic ones. These are ones from a local cheap kind of pound shop. These are 1 litre measuring jugs for the kitchen, and they're perfectly accurate enough. For very fine measurement, I have a little Patterson Graduate here, which does up to 150 millilitres. But my measuring system uses something that you saw in the intro, and it is a syringe. These are easily available online. You can get various different sizes. That's a 20 millilitre, this is a 60 millilitre, and they are great for measuring chemicals accurately and also getting them out of the bottles, because developer bottles can be quite difficult to get concentrates out of, for example. And with one of these you can just pop the needle in. That's a green needle, it's quite a big one, and then pull out the amount of chemical you want and put into the water, dilute it, and away you go. They're very, very useful. They're cheap online, and I tend to use these more than I do small graduates. They're very, very useful and exact. You're going to need some bottles to store your chemicals in once you've mixed them up, particularly things like your fixer and if you're using stock bath. Now, I really like these Kaiser bottles, especially the dark ones, because you can store developer in them without the developer getting affected by UV light, which tends to degrade developer quite quickly. These aren't super cheap, but they are really, really useful. You can, however, use all kinds of different bottles, and you can get glass. Dark glass bottles are really good. These, you'll need some funnels. I like to have 2 or 3 funnels hanging around. They're cheap, and you never have too many of those. I have a film squeegee for taking the moisture off a film once I've developed and fixed it and washed it. And what you can do is you can buy all of the stuff that you need in a pack. There are several places that do them. I'll give you a link in the description to somewhere that does tanks, measures, all of the stuff that you need in one go. That can be a really cost-effective way of doing it if you don't know what you're looking for. I would avoid vintage tanks online because they might work, but again, they might not be light tight. They're lovely things to look at, but they might not be. I would thoroughly recommend either the Patterson System 4 tanks or the AP tanks, and I believe the AP tank, and I think the System 4 tank is available in a kit. Something else you're going to need are film clips. One goes at either end of the film when you hang it up to dry. You can get the modern Patterson ones, which are plastic with little pointy teeth on them. Or you can get these, and I've found a bunch of these online. These are old Johnsons of Hendon ones, probably from the 60s. But these were not a lot of money. I like them because they're all stainless steel. Anyway, I'm going to put up a list of all the stuff that you need for development. And we can start very, very simply. And next time, on this very table here, I will develop right in front of your very eyes a black and white film. Okay? So, stick with this channel and stick with this mini series if you want to learn how to develop your first black and white film. Then we're going to progress on to developing colour. I'm going to go into a bit more detail about scanning and DSLR scanning, all the good stuff. And I'm going to be doing some reviews of kit on developing, and particularly the CineStill colour temperature control system, which should be really interesting. So stick around here if you want to see all this good stuff. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, perhaps you'll hit the like button. And if you've really enjoyed it and want to see more and want to take a look at the regular content, there'll be all kinds of reviews. I'm reviewing a very, very special lens in the next week or so. Then think about subscribing. Anyway, until I see you again, you take care of yourselves and keep taking pictures.